It was 1995, and Disney was gearing up to release their next animated feature film, Pocahontas. Their previous film, The Lion King, would set box office records and gross nearly $1 billion worldwide. It was not only Disney's most successful film, but it was the fourth highest grossing domestic film of all time. And all of this was taking place during what Disney CEO Michael Eisner had crowned the Disney Decade. It was a period defined by growth, and that meant that Pocahontas had some pretty big shoes to fill. So how do you help top one of the greatest films the studio has ever put out? With an unforgettable premiere. The Pocahontas premiere, announced at the end of January of 1995, was massive. Marketed as the largest film premiere in history, it was planned to take place outdoors on Central Park's Great Lawn with over 100,000 guests in attendance, in addition to up to 2,500 VIPs. It was a project that took over 9 months of planning and cost Disney millions of dollars. Disney first paid the city of New York a reported $1 million to use the Great Lawn for the event. $300,000 covered the cost of police and sanitation services before, during, and after the event, and the other $700,000 was a donation to the Central Park Conservancy. With over 1,500 workers putting together the premiere, it was nothing short of a marvel. The film was planned to play simultaneously on 4 8-story tall screens to an audience who would be spread across 13 acres of lawn. The screens were constructed by stacking and welding a number of shipping containers together, and special 70mm prints of the movie, amounting to over 16 miles of film, were created just for the event. Because the viewing space was so large, the audio for the film was intentionally slipped out of sync by 12 frames to ensure that the playback seemed in sync at the distances audiences were from the screen. The projection and stage setups required 40 miles of cable, and accommodations for 100,000 people required 305 portable toilets and over 15,000 pounds of ice for refreshments.
That'll be $1,000.
The setup was so labor-intensive that the lawn was closed to the public for the full week leading up to the premiere, and work continued nearly non-stop in those final days. Tickets for the event were awarded via a nationwide lottery held through local and national newspapers. Over 500,000 people entered to try and win tickets, and when June 10th rolled around, the 100,000 lucky winners made their way to Manhattan for the big premiere. The event began with people lining up as early as 9 a.m. in order to get onto the lawn by 2 p.m. for the 9:30 p.m. screening. And Disney, not about to pass up the opportunity to be, well, Disney, made sure there was plenty of Pocahontas merchandise at the premiere, and waits for the merch at points ran a reported 90 minutes long. Guests gathered on the lawn, and as 9:30 finally arrived, the movie began to play. And that is when it began to rain. But after waiting for up to 12 hours, nobody moved. They weren't about to let some rain get in the way of their big premiere. Luckily, it cleared up fairly quickly, and the rest of the screening went on without any hiccups. And of course, in classic Disney fashion, the entire event was topped off with a fireworks show. All in all, the premiere was a success. There were no major incidents, and the audience enjoyed the film. Everything was broken down and the park was cleaned up. It was even reported that Disney had flown out some Disneyland custodial cast members to help the sanitation department with that cleanup. The city of New York later estimated that beyond the $1 million they received for renting out the Great Lawn, up to $15 million was spent by those visiting the city for the premiere. There was some pushback by locals, however, who argued that as a public park, it wasn't really New York's place to rent it out to a corporation for as long as they did. As for Pocahontas, it was both a success and a failure at the same time. It ended up grossing nearly $350 million worldwide, and against an estimated $80 million budget, that made it an unquestionable win for the studio. However, compared to the nearly $1 billion gross of The Lion King the year before, it was seen as a relative disappointment. It would kick off a string of animated features at Disney that did well enough on their own, but never really recaptured that Lion King magic. It even led to other eye-catching events in the city, such as the time Disney brought the Main Street Electrical Parade to Manhattan to help promote Hercules. However, it perfectly represented the problem that came with focusing too much on growth. Sure, it's fine at first, but eventually you reach a point where you can't realistically keep topping yourself. Though one thing is for certain, that chase for growth and that attempt to top themselves led to a pretty memorable and fun bit of Disney and New York history.
Well, the Goldsteins are just hell-bent on finding the best spot here, apparently. This reminds me of my real family. They were always trying to lose me. All right, let's see. We've found our seats. We've got about 6 more hours till the show starts. I know. Let's spend our entire paycheck on souvenirs.